Johnny Frigo.
At 88, Johnny Frigo was perhaps the only surviving WLS National Bar Dance artist who still plays the music that made those Saturday night broadcasts a must for Mid-America.
I really was happy doing that Saturday night. I looked forward to that Saturday night. I would cancel another jazz gig, rather than miss Saturday night. Because I liked it so much.
Well, I'm headed back to Dixie, that's where I long to be. Where the cotton grows and the Swanee flows, that's home sweet home to me.
John Langford has revived the music of the WLS barn dance. It's also the subject of his visual art. Likewise, the subject of the art of Rob Lentz, which looks back to the era when WLS and its national barn dance made Chicago the country music capital of the world.
It is hard to believe, but it is true. And I think the thing that's interesting to me is that it happened so early.
During the year's WLS broadcast, the National Barn Dance live from the 8th Street Theater, some 6.5 million people saw the show in person. Tens of millions more heard the barn dance performers over the radio. The show was so popular in the 30s and 40s that a portion of the show was broadcast coast to coast. And in 1944, Paramount brought the WLS National Barn Dance to the silver screen.
Hello, 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 everybody, everywhere. You're listening to the National Barn Dance.
No other Chicago radio station has been so honored by Hollywood. When WLS went on the air on April 12, 1924, it was owned by Sears Roebuck. It had a rural orientation from the beginning. The venerable Prairie Farmer Weekly, founded in 1841, bought WLS in 1928. At its headquarters at 1230 West Washington, the printing presses rolled on the first floor, and from the third floor WLS studios, live country music reached an audience broadcasters of today have all but forgotten. Burridge Davenall Butler was the media czar at the helm of WLS and Prairie Farmer. He was blustery and dictatorial, but he had a philosophy of broadcasting that worked at the time.
One thing the Burridge Butler once said is that we are guests in people's homes. Please, please remember that and have your demeanor reflect that.
Rural Mid-America was the audience Burridge Butler targeted, and it was here, between the Alleghenies on the east and the Rockies on the west, that listener loyalty to WLS ran the deepest.
You look at the connection of the listener. That is, I think, something that we don't see much of anymore, is the connection that they had. And here's people that are out in the farmland in the Midwest area, and they're up early in the morning, they're out all day, and their weekends are spent no more than 5 miles from where they grew up. And this big radio signal comes in from Chicago with information and news and music and all these crazy characters that ended up becoming part of the National Barn Dance.
Some of the greatest country artists of all time were first heard on WLS.
In a vine-covered shack in the mountains.
There was Gene Autry, long before he went to Hollywood.
I
wanna be a cowboy's dream girl.
There was Patsy Montana, whose WLS broadcasts helped her become the first female country singer to sell 1 million records.
When I was single, I used to be afraid.
There was Lulu Bell Wiseman, in 1936 elected the Queen of All Radio thanks to her WLS appearances. There were the Hoosier Hotshots, who to this day have a cult following. And there was Pat Buttram, one of the most successful of the Hayseed comics.
Folks, this is a National Barn Dance, and I want to tell you something about food.
A lot of people may remember him as Mr. Haney in Green Acres, but even before he went to TV, he had a huge career at WLS.
Homesick, heartsick.
There was the ageless Grace Wilson. She sang on the first WLS barn dance. She sang on the last WLS barn dance. But the De Zurich sisters were perhaps the most unusual artists ever heard on WLS. They yodeled like cackling poultry. WLS had a news department that told the farmer what he needed to know, a staff meteorologist who told farmers when their corn and beans should be going into the ground. There were daily reports from the Chicago Union stockyards. And long before there was Martha Stewart, WLS had Martha Crane, who provided homemaking tips to 2 generations of farmers' wives and farmers' daughters. WLS was, in fact, part of a multimedia operation.
Prairie Farmer being a publisher, they had the presses right there, and they used it to their advantage. They would publish a weekly magazine called Standby throughout the 30s, had pictures of the performers, it had comments from listeners, it had recipes, and of course it was advertiser driven because you did see quite a few ads in there. And then the family album came out every year from the early 1930s, I think 1930 was the first one, all the way to 1957, and was like a high school yearbook. You would see all the performers. You would see the barn dance people. You would see people behind the scenes, whether they were staff announcers, news people, salespeople. They would even go to the point of showing the secretaries that worked behind the scenes. And people were able to connect with the radio that way. They would hold up their family album and go, oh, that's who that is.
While most WLS artists hailed from the country, there were some who couldn't tell a boar from a barrel. Johnny Frigo was a jazz musician born on the South Side, but when he heard WLS needed a fiddler, he figured he'd cross over.
So I went there, and they said, they're auditioning me. They said, do you know any country tunes? I said, I don't know a lot of country tunes, you know. I only knew Turkey in the Straw, I think. That's the only one I knew the melody of, you know. So, I said, that's pretty good now. But how can you back up a singer?
In your heart, take a good look.
He could, as it turned out, and he could adapt to the barn dance way of doing things.
No rehearsals except just our going in the back room asking the singer, what do you want to do? And then I'd go on stage, and just while they're announcing, I'd say, 3 pickups to a G7th. So you go, boom, 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 and then they'd sing.
Who put the gold in your hair and the smile on your face and the devil in your eyes so blue?
By the mid-1950s, this kind of radio entertainment was an anachronism for big city radio stations. It wasn't just that musical tastes were changing. Much of the farmland and the primary coverage area of WLS was giving way to urban sprawl. When ABC Paramount bought out Prairie Farmer in 1960, it decided it was time to say adios to this kind of music. Newspaper ads the last week of April telegraphed that change was coming soon to WLS. Bob Atcher on the April 30th, 1960 Barn Dance broadcast confirmed what many feared.
It is true. This is our last National Barn Dance in this big, long series.
It is no secret what God can do.
The final WLS National Barn Dance closed with a hymn and a farewell from Grace Wilson.
He'll do for you.
Good night, friends. Not goodbye, but just so long, and God bless.
2 days later, the new WLS was born.
WLS in Chicago.
The live country musicians were out, the disc jockeys were in. And as for the old WLS record library, which contained hundreds of off-air recordings of WLS artists, well, nothing there was likely to make the playlist of the new WLS.
They literally came in with shovels, pulled all of these shelves off the wall into a big pile, and literally shoveled it out the window to a waiting dump truck down below.
We've come a long way.
And so vanished a bit of Chicago history. And when people think of country music these days, they don't think about the folks who for so many years performed every Saturday night on the stage of the 8th Street Theater. But the spirit of the WLS National Barn Dance is alive here, in life and in art.
And we still have a long way to go.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Rich Samuels.
You can view the Barn Dance exhibit at the Chicago Cultural Center through May 13th. And by the way, it was May 1st, 1960, that WLS went to rock and roll. I wonder if that format was successful.
Well, I'm a loyal member of WTTW. I've been watching for many, many years, and I enjoy Chicago Tonight.
We got a great team. They go back and forth, talk about current issues with great guests.
It lets you know everything that's going on in the city of Chicago.
I watch Channel 11. I've been a subscriber for the last 25, 30 years.
I'm a member.
We've been members of Channel 11 for years.
I'm a member.
Yeah, when we get something in the mail from Channel 11, we always send it.